Okay, just double checking that I am actively live streaming, which I am. So back to OBS, and here we are, ready for another paint session. I've got cerulean blue hue, I've got cadmium yellow light, I've got titanium white, and I've now graduated on from using water to using thinner and stand oil. I'm trying to get equal mixes of both, so I will borrow from this pile here and probably leave some in reserve for later on. I have changed my plan again, because when I do my art I normally just do whatever I feel I want to do, rather than being a lot more premeditated about it than I am. Okay, I'm looking for a very bright yellow, which I have here, and the intention is to paint up the Bromeliad, and there we go. I'm kind of live streaming at the moment, so special guest appearance from my dog and my beloved wife. Let's try to listen. Yep. So this feels more familiar because that's like water. This is feeling a lot more syrupy. So I'm adding a little bit of water to it in the mix as well. Okay, and the stand oil. Okay, so a nice strong yellow. And some of this blue over here to make a lovely green. Very nice green. Possibly a little blue bias towards it. Up some of the stand oil. A little bit of water and some of the mix in there. Okay, and so what I want to do is just work on areas that I haven't worked on. Because I don't know what I want to do with them. So one thing that I know that I want to do is work on these things, these bromeliads here. And I did a little bit of research on them. And they have yellow tips. To about the halfway mark. Lovely. Far too runny. So again, my yellow is quite an old paint. It may not be workable, instantly workable for that reason. So rotating the brush again to find a bit of a point. There we go. And we go again. I'll try over here. Yep. Well, I can draw with it, which is good. Always a good feeling. Being able to draw. And yeah, when I did some research on these bromeliads today, I discovered that some of them had a little upward twist to the point, which is a detail that I'm keen to use. I think that'll be quite nice. This one feels just a little bit too runny. Okay, let's go back into this one. That's fine. Now I'm seeing some color shift as I'm applying it. Well, that's okay. And I also noticed that some of them had a little green kind of detailing here. Which I might incorporate into the yellow. Get my syrupy mix. And it was like the little eyeball itself. So a little green patch. And if I introduce it down here onto the red, I suspect I will get a brown kind of transition. So green dollop. Green and red to make a kind of brown transition. So I can feel this paint going very tacky already. I don't want to overwork the green into the yellow in case I just change the effect of it. Now I know that by adding, medium like stand oil and thinner is supposed to increase the working time for things like blending. So this should be okay. But I am finding that it's got a kind of tackiness that I'm not 100% comfortable with. Into here again. Take a look at it. So it's almost like having a kind of glazing medium. In my own experience, I've used a little bit more experience of using fast drying medium. Okay, so the green glaze on top of the strong kind of reddish orange is creating a brown. That doesn't come as a surprise at all. This mix is slightly more mixable, workable than this one. So I think the balance of the combination of thinner is possibly more correct. And go to the halfway mark. On this one. Okay. First application has sunk a little. So when I go on again, you can see it's a lot brighter. Second time round. But while I am less comfortable with the feel of this paint, it certainly does have more workability. You know, it's more easy to blend. So, and that is, in this instance, ideal. Oh wow, got the mix right there. That's gone on deliciously yellow. Let's see if we have the same sort of sinking in a moment. Okay. But certainly we needed something to make the painting a little bit more tropical, a little bit more fun. Okay, that is so tacky. It is not. Okay, a little bit of water now. In both. So again, I've changed my mind, but that just doesn't feel right. But by doing that, I may have affected the translucence or the transparency of the paint. So two things are going on here. The green on top of the yellow is working wet on wet, and the green on top of the red is working wet on dry. So as I use the brush to repeatedly visit this area, I'm blending the colours together more and more. Okay, I like a really soft brush, like these sable synthetic blends. Oh wow, that colour popped. And so I wonder if having a hog hair brush might be useful later on. So here I am working wet on dry, drawing in some of the texture, and lifting out some of the material there because that looks a bit heavy. And wet on wet with that area there, and then wet on dry. Okay. What happens if we revisit yellow to the tips? Now that is deliciously syrupy. That is lovely. That feels like a real oil paint. And that's given a transition from a very pure yellow into the yellow that's sunk into the red base to give a kind of orange. So we do have an unexpected additional transition just by virtue of the paint sinking. In that kind of colour shift. But this is nice. So it feels like proper, which is proper oil paint. But now it's beginning to feel like proper oil paint. And we get the bonus of the ability to blend on the surface and make those transitions. Like so. Okay. I'm unresolved what to do with some of this area here. But I know that now would be a good time to do the padlock. And this was just water, so thinner and stand oil is observing the fat over lean rule. Okay, I want to use the stain that was applied in the first instance as shadow colour. And that's okay. I can go in with burnt umber and create my darks, and my ultimate lights will be just white. Daffodils. By putting down a base layer of white, we're getting to see the yellow in its truest form. And I think that's a trumpet there. So that makes a 3. That works for me. And back in with the dark green to show some kind of foliage forms. Need it more workable than that. Okay, that's very transparent. Well, I've now got a problem here because this bromeliad is right in front of this flower here, so I can't make that yellow because there would be a little separation between the yellow and the yellow here. So what I am going to do is I'm going to block in these flowers here. And see how it works. Now lately I've been thinking, you know, all of this would have been so much faster just using a digital drawing, some kind of digital drawing tool, like a Wacom tablet. I've just had an idea that if this could reflect the daffodil shape over there, so these could be daffodil forms. And so there would be a family resemblance or a coherence between two parts of the painting. Now with this mix, which is half thinner and half stand oil, the paint is very syrupy in this yellow and very responsive. It's also leaving a little bit of the characteristic of the brush mark as well. Which is a nice feature. I do feel as if I would benefit from a stiffer paintbrush. But even that said, the paint is very nice. I might change the drawing a little bit here, put in an extra curve. Okay. So that's certainly made it leap off the page. That's certainly had a bit of an impact. What I want to do now is make a very fresh green. again, I'm having to use a little bit more water. Let's see if I can pick up some stand oil. Okay. I guess I'm only going to be able to learn how these media handle by, by practice. So. Also, I'm using, well, I've introduced a new yellow, but this, I knew I was going to do that, but I'm also using an old blue, cerulean blue, that we've used before, because, um, it's not a restricted palette that I'm using. I've got quite a range of colours in, but I don't want to exceed the colour. I don't want to make it excessive, and also using previously used colours like this cerulean blue here. I want to give at least hope to achieve a little bit of family resemblance. So also the stand oil is going to increase the drying time. So when I visit this tomorrow, it won't be dry, I think, and I'll be able to work some more into it. There's a stubborn bit here in the brush. It's a bit of unmixed blue. So, there we go. And back to drawing again. So even looking at the paint mix, it appears a lot more. There's an oily sheen on it, whereas the first layers were just mixed with water. Did appear to be very matte. This does have a kind of oily appearance, a nice sheen to it. So. Bit more paint. And perhaps I need to get a mixing knife so that when I do use the media in with the paint, it can be thoroughly mixed and avoid the problem. See, that just doesn't want to move quite as much as the earlier application. So what happens if I just touch a little bit of water? Yep, instantly makes it more mobile. But I still want to maintain my typical rules of oil paint with the fat over lean principle. So in this case there isn't a problem, because the stain is the only bit that has formed this part of what I'm calling the bird of paradise. Some more of my careful drawing. I'll rotate it for ease. Okay, I've now obscured the line that I had drawn in to show the center line. So I think I'll just reinstate that with Sgraffito. This application is so much richer than before. So I do feel as if I'm learning a little bit about oil paints. Which wouldn't be my go-to. I've had an awful lot of experience working with acrylics. In particular, acrylics that behave like oils. Like for instance, Atelier Interactive acrylics. So this is a transition point here. This is a bit tricky because the guitar, which is here, begins to transition towards the flower. Hopefully we can see that. So the guitar is on this side here, where the rollers are, round about to here. I would expect a little bit of transition towards the plant element of this design. And so, if we're right in saying that, and we know it to be true, that the stand oil and thinner is going to increase the working time of this paint, I know that it's going to be reworkable tomorrow. So that if I bring in some more paints, like say for instance I decide to tackle the brown of the headstock of the guitar, I can work it into the already wet green area and hopefully make a little bit of a transition to make the transition look organic. So I'm leaving a little bit of transition space there. Now a little bit more spring-like green here, where the roller, the tuning peg, becomes the sepal joining on to the base of the flower. So slightly different. And we've got another one of those. Lovely spring green things. Well, two of them really. One here. To form the sepal of this flower. Okay. And this one here. So that's okay. Because they're side by side, I do want to make a kind of separation between them. So I want this one to be the darker of the two. Which means that the lighter of the two will stand out a little bit more. Like so. There's a little bit more of the stand oil into this paint here, but it's a little bit frustrating that it doesn't maintain the same consistency. It does seem to want to fight me. So I must learn how to handle this paint a little bit more. I just know that I want a transition from darker to lighter here. So I'll bring in this lighter paint and work wet and wet, transitioning some of the darker paint into it. Like this. And of course transition some of the lighter paint into the darker. So blending it on the surface. I might try the same here. Okay, that's transition happening there. Oh yeah, very syrupy paint. So I'll try the same again here. And give a kind of ribbed effect, which will probably not stay. But a kind of ribbed effect. To the form. And gently transition this down. This feels like it's over flooded, so transition it down a little bit. Just drag the material down. Now this is interesting, that the actual brush marks, the lines, are seen in the thickness of the paint. Now that should probably settle down and level out a little bit. Okay, so a little darker here with this paint. Now I wonder if the issue with me is that I'm having with this paint is that I'm using too much of the medium and only a smaller amount is needed. So it's quite possible. So I'm going to do the same again here by introducing my greens. Start with the dark. Ooh, wow, that went on. Alright, so I've been looking forward to this bit to see where the green sits up against the red of the neck decoration in the hummingbird. Okay, what happens? That's okay. And if I do the sgraffito here, yeah. It'll be interesting to see if the viscosity of the paint and its self-leveling qualities mean that that's sink back down. Okay, borrowing from here, which seems overloaded, to here, which is less. And I can detect that my soft sable synthetic mix brush is struggling to push some of the more solid paint around. Firmer mixed paint around. Again here. So now this is a question of loading up the brush correctly. If it's not loaded up enough, then it doesn't flow correctly. See, that's the junction there that I was interested in, where this bit overlaps with the leaves. So I've got a lot more of this to paint. Perhaps more water is needed to help it flow. I'm beginning to suspect that even with the stand oil thinning the paint, it's still maintaining a level of opacity which is able even to knock back these dark lines which were painted in as guidelines to show the ribbing of the leaves. Okay, not much is happening with that line there, it's too black. So what I'd like to do Let's go over the top of it. And so this is a glaze, which is allowing the drawing to show through, but the effect of it is dampened and tempered somewhat. So it's a nice kind of tropical tropical green. So I'll have to make a note that when these are combined together, that's too thin. Too thin. So more of the green. There's still some stand oil in there to make up more of the green. So there's plenty more blue in there. Plenty more yellow. Okay. The blue's all but gone now. But I've now got a creamy paint which flows quite well, even with this probably inappropriately soft brush now. I'll introduce some more paint into that area there. And a separation has been lost between those two, so I'm going to bring that back and look for it there. Put some ribbing in. I can see that there is sinking. Let's see what happens with the second layer. Okay. A larger leaf here. Yes, I suspect I've gotten the balance between thinner and water and stand oil wrong. So part of my process is to reflect upon what I do as I do it. So whether you have a notepad beside you or you video record your sessions like I'm doing right now, there is some record of your learning so that you can say, all right, I tried this and this worked, this didn't work. And in that way you build up experience. So I've enjoyed doing this. I've learned quite a lot about these oil paints. My first instinct would be, however, to go into acrylics. So what do we do? Do we consolidate a strength by sticking to what we know and practicing it, honing those skills? Or instead of consolidating a strength, do we challenge a weakness, a perceived weakness in our repertoire, and take ourselves out of our comfort zone, deliberately so, to try and help us learn from the experience? So I think you know where I sit on this one. I believe it's important to challenge yourself. Especially if you learn from the experience. I am happy with that. Back into my yellow. And from what I've learned already, this should join on and flow. And mix nicely into the wet area. Now there's a little bit of grippiness which I hadn't anticipated, so it suggests that the brush is dry. But having said that, I'm enjoying the texture that it's adding to the surface. So some grippiness there, which is giving a kind of broken line, which is quite nice, quite like it. Whereas this application is slightly more syrupy and smooth. There's something a little bit more immediate and likable about the marks that are being made. They retain something of the hand of the maker, which is something to celebrate in art, is individual difference and uniqueness. We don't want all to be the same. Okay, there's a liveliness about those, which I appreciate. And now, if I do my signature sgraffito, I can put in some detailing, which suggests the texture of the plant. and hopefully offers some legibility to the plant forms. That's okay. Now if I want to darken some areas, I can go in with glazing again with another mix of thinner and stand oil. And create some, darks where the foliage overlaps a little. That would work. I could bring in some complementaries and things to dull it down or add some spice. Like this lovely red orange against the green sings out. Yeah, it's beginning to have the tropical feel that I want it to have. So I'm quite pleased with that. I can't postpone it much longer. I'll have to do the whites on the body and the underside of the wing and the underside of the tail here. We're looking at the top side of the wing here, so that'll be treated slightly differently, but the underside of the wing is certainly lighter, so we'll have to address that. And I haven't yet even used any white to create even more subtle greens. It's quite interesting. If I put a little bit more in, maybe that. Maybe the white here, instead of being a buff titanium, should be an olive green mix. So, but certainly I can see some of these greens making an appearance in the shine and the detail of the hummingbird itself. Okay, I am aware that I'm getting very tired now, so I think what we'll do is I'll call it a day and bring this live stream to an end. Thank you once again for joining my studio practice and spending some time with me, and I hope this has inspired you somewhat and will encourage you to enjoy creativity wherever you are. Thanks now, and